Greetings, DEI Innovation Summit. I'm Ruth Farmer, and I've spent the better part of 20 years working as a social entrepreneur to change the status quo in tech. This work has taken me from the Girl Scouts to the White House and to standing on this stage. Along the way, I've learned that to fix this permanently, we must tackle the underlying root causes. And by that, I mean the systems, those that effectively, though unintentionally, shut underrepresented groups out of tech pathways. I'm talking about women, people of color, people with disabilities, and those from low-income communities who happen to make up 75% of the population. What does this mean for industry? It means shutting the door on 75% of available talent, or leaving 75% of the team on the bench, playing the game with one arm tied behind your back. Whatever analogy you want to use, the bottom line is we all lose. Don't get me wrong, there has been lots of work and some great progress in addressing this challenge. Over my career, I've seen hundreds, if not thousands, of efforts emerge to address pieces of this puzzle. But those efforts are in large part band-aids on a broken system. To harness the diverse talent available here and everywhere in the world, we need to go beyond just scratching the surface. And that was one of the best things about being on the working group of the ACT report. We set out to go deep, and each member came with decades of experience digging into both the problems in the system and the most promising solutions. So what is this problem we're trying to solve? Today, the ability to create through technology defines life chances and opens or closes doors. For all kids to have those open doors so they can create tomorrow's tech solutions and fill your open jobs, they must have a chance to learn computer science from a younger age. Not as an add-on or a one-off experience, but integrated throughout school. This is not happening for most students, especially those from low-income communities and communities of color. And that is a loss for all of us. The bottom line is, without meaningful exposure to computing by 9th grade, 13, 14, a student's chances of moving into a technical pathway are close to zero. Fortunately, we know how to put this right, but only if we all come together as a community and invest in solving for computer science education at the systems level, because tackling educational inequity is a colossal task. Individual companies are more likely to land on the moon. But if the tech industry came together on this, in partnership with schools, universities, government, and others, well then, yes, it's a moonshot, but it is absolutely possible. In fact, as the ACT report outlined, we have already started. And if you're in a company or organization that makes philanthropic investments, please give it your very serious consideration. And frankly, if you're in a company that doesn't make them, you should be. So for those of you following along on the ACT report, this is Action 9, page 115. You know you're going to be reading this at bed tonight, so download it if you haven't, actreport.com. Here's the situation. The tech workforce is majority white or Asian, male and affluent. That is a fact. The U.S. talent pipeline is majority non-white, female, and low income. So there's pretty clearly a mismatch here, and frankly, a looming threat for all of us. Action 9 sets out to solve an underlying problem that's driving this mismatch. In order to prepare every student in computing, we must have teachers prepared to teach computing. You can't teach kids if you don't have teachers. It is simple as that. The problem is the teaching workforce for computing does not exist yet. Fortunately, most people get it. Parents get it. Policymakers get it. Moreover, they want it. 41 states now have a policy for teacher certification in computer science. 37 states now have mandated standards for computer science, and 23 states require all high schools to offer computer science. But how can schools offer computer science if the teachers aren't there to teach it? The supply of trained teachers can't possibly meet the demand, and nearly every current effort to upskill teachers in computing is focused on teachers already in the workforce. Meanwhile, every year, 150,000 new teachers graduate, and they have no training in computing. So here are 2 data points I want you to consider. In the entire US, the total number of PhDs of computer science education, who are actually attached to a college of education, is less than 20. That's 20 people in the whole country. And of the 150,000 new teachers graduating every year, according to the latest available data, the last year, 110 graduated ready to teach computer science. That means our schools are constantly playing catch up. They have to send every newly hired teacher for costly additional training in computer science just to meet the standards set by their state, and this is simply nonsense. What we are proposing today is to change the system that creates new teachers. Currently, there are 1,400 colleges of education in the US. These are the institutions that create all new teachers, where all teachers go to school. Yet 7% of those colleges of education include computer science training. And of those, 95% indicate it's one lesson in a single course, which is effectively 2 hours in their entire program. So imagine if the CS grads you were hiring had had 2 hours of AI or 2 hours of security or 2 hours of data structures across all 4 years. They would be unemployable. So our proposal is that we attack this problem at the root, creating centers of excellence for computer science education in colleges of education, so that we can ensure that every new teacher is equipped to teach computer science to all their students out of the gate. And at the same time, we optimize for DEI. We start with colleges of education that train the most teachers of color with diverse populations. We create a new generation of computer science teachers of color teaching in communities of color. And the good news is that we're at a pivotal moment of opportunity. The disruptions due to COVID have reignited conversations about education reform. Interest and demand in computer science is at an all-time high. So today, we're announcing the beginning of what we hope will be a sea change for computer science education in the US and beyond. It's called CS for Ed, and it's a systems approach to solving the teacher shortage in computer science that in turn will help solve the talent and diversity crisis in tech. Now I'd like to introduce Dr. Leanne DeLizer, the Executive Director of CS for All, for the big reveal.
Thanks, Ruth, and thanks for your strategic thinking and contributions in bringing this initiative to life. We are thrilled to announce CS for Ed, a bold call to action to invest in K-12 computer science education capacity in the colleges that prepare our nation's teachers. This unprecedented initiative launches today with commitments of $20 million in endowments to create computer science education capacity at 4 trailblazing institutions. These investments will create sustainable capacity for computer science education practice, research, and development at each institution, but also within the schools, districts, and communities where their teacher graduates work. And more importantly, this will unlock generations of technical talent emerging from the classrooms of those teachers. 4 universities are part of this initial cohort. California State University at Dominguez Hills will establish a center and an endowed chair for CS education excellence in close partnership with the LA Unified Public Schools through a generous investment from SNAP Incorporated. Georgia State University, as a second investment from SNAP, will create a center for CS excellence that includes data science education and opportunities not only for their students, but teacher candidates everywhere through micro badges. The University of Texas at El Paso, with a gift from the Hopper Dean Foundation, will continue their leadership in the Rio Grande Valley and ensure schools in the area have a pipeline of well-prepared teachers. The University of Florida, through a gift from philanthropist Ken Griffin, founder and CEO of Citadel Capital, will build an initiative to ensure sustainable CS education pipelines for the entire state of Florida. Together, these investments will prepare more than 1,000 teachers a year who will each serve an estimated 1,000 students over their careers, ultimately bringing computer science to 1 million students with the first year of graduates alone. And more importantly, these are not short-term projects that will run out of money and fade away after 1 to 3 years. This is a permanent change, a disruption, if you will, to the standard preparation of teachers, where CS is an afterthought, an interesting sidebar, or a single lesson in 4 years of study. And they solve a major problem. Computer science has been seen as an elective, something for some, and therefore not part of the standard teacher preparation. These investments make computer science a priority in schools of education. And as anyone who runs a company knows, you can agree with the need for something. You can say you're supporting it, but until you make it a priority, until it has resources allocated and experts working on it, until you hold the division accountable for doing it, results will be mixed. Each of these endowments ensures that it's not about one enthusiastic individual bucking the system, but a well defined goal, accompanied by metrics and reporting that drives accountability. University leadership will not only allow CS education, they'll be proud of their university's advancement. They'll celebrate those teacher candidates who go on to teach in schools, and that sense of pride, that ownership that will plant the seeds of an entire generation of graduates who are prepared for the education needs of today and tomorrow. Now, that kind of support, the belief from leaders and the financial support to back it up, creates excellence and brings even more support. Already, UT El Paso is working with partners to raise additional funds for their center from the National Science Foundation. Georgia State, through an endowment matching campaign, has contributed an additional $2 million to the center. As any good investor can tell you, investment unlocks future investment when the outcomes are high caliber. But we are here talking today about DEI. So let's take a minute and talk about why these investments matter for the DEI conversation. Ruthe, you spent your career focused on young women and creating opportunities for Black, Indigenous, and Hispanic youth. Why this announcement? This program is part of the DEI conversation.
As I shared before, the school kids in the US, who incidentally will be the workforce of 2030, are more diverse than ever. The US schools tipped over to a majority minority population in 2014, yet the teacher population remains predominantly white. And that's why, out of the gate, CS for Ed is intentionally investing in institutions that prepare teachers of color. And then those teachers will go work in communities of color. One of the investments we've announced is the Hopperdine investment in UT El Paso. That's University of Texas at El Paso, way out western Texas. This will generate a whopping 250 Hispanic teachers each year who will teach in primarily Hispanic schools in Northwest Texas, with each cohort reaching about 2.5 million students. Imagine if the majority of students learning computing from kindergarten through high school in Texas were Hispanic. That creates a foundational disruption of the status quo. And I'm delighted that SNAP has announced an investment in CSU Dominguez Hills. That's California State University, Dominguez Hills. And by the way, the Cal State University system prepares something like 20% of all the teachers in the country. This investment will produce 100 CS prepared teachers each year who will primarily work in the LA schools. 63% of CSU Dominguez Hills teacher candidates are Hispanic. This yields a lifetime impact of about 1,000 students per teacher, aka 10 million students in a decade. And SNAP is also supporting Georgia State University, where the majority of new CS prepared teachers will be Black teachers and who will go work and teach in Black communities. Again, this is a root cause approach to change the system, not just work at the surface.
Thanks, Ruthe. I have a PhD in computer science, so I know how quickly the field changes. Not since the introduction of the personal computer have we seen a decade where technology has made more of an impact in our lives, our workplaces, and our companies. In the midst of all of this, the bureaucratic and slow moving education system has started to make the biggest curriculum change in 50 years. We've added a completely new subject to the expectations for K 12 students. Let's pause for a second to consider how massive that is. We're asking schools full of adults who do not themselves understand third grade computer science to create learning pathways, choose from the hundreds of curriculum available, refine instructional materials, and teach something they never learned. Computer science was in the same boat 40 years ago, and great faculty, like the ones I learned from at Carnegie Mellon, were key to the field's growth. Just as public-private partnerships built the internet, we're going to need faculty to build this new field of CS education. Faculty do more than teach. They write grants, conduct research, hire and mentor graduate students, and unlock scalability. Those students go on to found programs in other institutions and train additional teachers and incubate additional grad students, creating a virtuous circle of growth. That's a big challenge. Today, 48% of schools in the US still do not teach computer science. And many of them are in states where standards are required. Let's give them the talent, resources to succeed, and ultimately we'll all succeed as an industry and a country. These investments will not only build the infrastructure for schools to deliver computer science for all students, they'll become exemplars, attracting the very best talent, future faculty, cutting edge researchers, and exciting partnerships to become a lighthouse, a beacon that will inspire others. So let's talk about how we can build more lighthouses and continue to close this gap.
Thanks for that, Leanne. It is time to invest in a permanent solution to bring computer science to our schools, our students, and our future workforce. The tech sector will continue to grow, and so will competition for talent. There is no question about that. So if you want a talent pipeline where you operate and where your employees live, you must invest in the colleges of education in your community, the ones that serve your employees' children and the future employees that are learning right now. So today, I am calling on all of you, and we are calling on all of you, to join us in disrupting the landscape of U.S. computing education forever. We announced 4 institutions we're starting with, but we need 1,400 to resource the entire U.S. There's a lot of empty space on that map, probably some in your neighborhood. There's also a ton of opportunity for meaningful impact and long-term influence. So I invite you to join us and learn more. You can reach out to me or CS4Ed at csforall.org. Our team will help you identify an institution in your community that will empower your future workforce. You can look it up in the ACT report, page 115. Remember, you've got your bedtime reading all set up for tonight. But more importantly, I want you to know this is not a fairy tale. Together, we can give all children opportunity and build a diverse talent pipeline for the entire industry. So thank you for listening, but more important than that, thank you for acting.